In this video, I will show you how to create this drag and shoot mechanic you can see in games like Angry Birds or in this game I made a few years back. Thanks to this user for making the request. So without further ado, let's get right into this tutorial. Here in Unity, we have a completely blank scene. So the first thing I'm gonna do is create a script, the only script we're gonna need, and I'm gonna name it drag and shoot. So we have the Unity defaults, we have the start method and the update method. The start method is called once before the first execution of update after the mono behavior is created. If you want things to run earlier than the start method, you would use the awake method, and the update is called every frame. So we are going to use both of them. I'm going to remove these comments just to clean this up a bit. And now we're going to create all the public variables that we want visible in the inspector. So we're going to go ahead and make this public. I'm going to give the value of 10 just to start. We can later on tune this a bit. So our three variables are power, and we also have the max drag distance, which is 5, and then our trajectory resolution, which is 30, is the amount of points our line renderer will have. And now we're going to declare our private variables, which are actually 4. We have our rigid body 2D. We also have the camera, which is to reference our main camera and convert the screen to world positions. And we also have the vector3 start point, which is the point where the player starts dragging. And lastly, we have our line renderer, which is what will actually render our trajectory. So in the start method, we're gonna go ahead and give value to these three variables, RB, the camera, and the line renderer. The start point is actually dynamic, so we're gonna call it in our update. So let's go ahead and set our RB. So we do get component rigid body 2D, we get our main camera, we also get our line renderer, and we also set our line renderer to false. That way the trajectory is not visual on start, since we're not actually using it until we actually start dragging. So in the update, we need 3 conditions. We want to detect when the finger is touching the screen. So first we're going to have the first touch, then when dragging, and lastly when we lift our finger. So this first one we'll use input get mouse button down. We also need one for dragging. In this case, we remove the down. This means it will be detected in every frame if the finger is touching or the mouse is being pressed. And lastly, for when the finger is up or the mouse is up, we use up instead of down. So the 0 means that it just needs one touch or one click. So now for this first one, we're going to convert the mouse position to world space and store it as the start point. So start point equals to the position the mouse is or the finger is. And then we're going to set the start point.z to 0 since we are in a 2D plane. We don't want to use the z-axis. Now while dragging, we'll create a vector3 which will detect the current point, and same as the start point, will also detect where the finger is, constantly detected. We're also not going to use the z-axis, so we need to make sure it's 0. And we now created vector2 drag vector, which will give us the distance and direction. So we have start point minus the current point. And we also want to make sure the player cannot over drag. So we want to limit how far the player can drag, which is why we do this vector2 clamp magnitude, and we clamp it to the max drag distance we set on the start. And lastly, we are calling the show trajectory, which we haven't created yet. We're going to use that later on. And now here is for when we lift the fingers. Instead of current or start point, we are creating a new vector3, which is our endpoint, and it will be the last position, same as the other 2 is the last position it was in. We are also not using the z-axis, so it equals 0. And now we create a new vector2, which will be the force, which is start point minus the endpoint, and we multiply it by the power. And then we add that force to our rigid body. For the first time, we reference RB, add force, and we use it here using the force mode to the impulse. And we make sure our line renderer is disabled, since once we lift our finger, it shouldn't be visible. And now we need one last method, which is the show trajectory one that will render our trajectory. So first, we want to make sure our line renderer is visible, so we set it to true, and we set the amount of points we need for the line renderer, which will be equal to the trajectory resolution we set on the start. We create an array, a vector3 array of points, which the size will be equal to the amount of points we need, which is the trajectory resolution, which right now is 30. We also need the velocity, which equals the initial force divided by the mass. We're using the rigid body component to get the mass, and the vector2 start position. To get the starting position of the object, we just need to do transform position, since this script will be inside the game object we're gonna launch. So to make use of this variable, we'll use this loop which will go through all the points using variable y. So we're going to use Unity's time, since each point will be in a specific position at a given time. In order to get this position and actually position the points where they need to be, we're using the trajectory formula, which equals the starting position plus the velocity times the time plus half the gravity times time squared. And this value equals the current point position. Lastly, we can actually render our trajectory using LineRenderer set positions points. So this will set all the points in the LineRenderer. So right now we're not calling this method anywhere. So we need to go ahead and call it while we're dragging, since that's when we're gonna see our trajectory. So we need to set it here. We'll call show trajectory and send the initial force, which is the drag vector times the power. And that's it. We have our script ready. So now we can go ahead and create our ball. I'm going to create a circle, place it in the center of the screen and make it smaller like this. I'm also going to make a ground. I'm going to add a square and name it. I'm going to make it black. I'm going to place it here and I'm going to add a box collider 2D. Now onto our circle, we're going to add a circle collider, a rigid body 2D, a LineRenderer, and lastly, the component we just created, the drag and shoot. So here we have our values set. We don't need to change anything for now until we start testing. And we can set our LineRenderer 0.008. And I'm gonna make sure the point is curved. So I'm gonna go end cap vertices. So I'm gonna set this to 90. Same as this. Also going to add a material just so we don't have this purple color. This one, which is a flat one, okay. So now we press on play and we see it. So yeah, that was over today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this tutorial useful, consider leaving a like or subscribing if you want to see more content like this. And yeah, see you guys on my next video.